It's going to. All right, well, welcome everyone. I am very excited to have you all here today. As I said, we're going to be talking about attracting and retaining volunteers. This is the first time that we've run this, so if it goes a bit long, I apologise, but I'll do my best to really keep it nice and tight for you. Now, let's get into it. Attracting and retaining volunteers. So, what is volunteering? And I guess the big thing to remember is that volunteering is time willingly given for the common good and without financial gain. And that's something that's really important for us to understand when we are working with our volunteers, because it actually is, they have different motivations for being in the tuck shop, to say, as we would as tuck shop conveners. And so when we did a poll a while ago, these are some of the words that were used by volunteers to describe their time in the tuck shop. So as you can see, in terms of the culture that they like in a tuck shop, it really is all about giving. It's all about teamwork, sharing, happy memories, challenging, humour, enthusiastic. So it's a really positive environment that they like when they're in a tuck shop and when they're volunteering. And I think that's really important to remember when we have volunteers in our tuck shops as well. And that really does come down, and that keeping that in mind really helps when we're trying to attract and retain volunteers as well. Now, as I mentioned before, Karen, who is online today, is developing a training program, and this training management course is actually much bigger than this hour snapshot that I'll be providing, and it actually goes in a lot of detail. So if you are committed to developing a volunteer management program, this training course is going to be right up your alley. So these are all the things that you'll be doing, developing an effective volunteer plan, really going through the nuts and the bolts of everything it takes in terms of pulling volunteers in and then sustaining them and retaining them. And I think it's really worthwhile. So if you are interested, please keep an eye out for emails. We'll be putting out registration in the coming months. So we're looking forward to that. Now, in terms of what we're going to talk about next, it really is just an overview of this training program. So I've tried to really mirror the information that's going to be in there, but at a very high level. So first and foremost, guys, when we are looking at attracting and retaining volunteers, we need to have a plan. So, and it is a cycle. So we need to plan, recruit, induct, and support. And we kind of need to do it almost sometimes every year. We need to sort of go through this cycle, or every term. You're always going to be in different sections of this cycle, depending on where your volunteer base sits at the moment. So if you have loads of volunteers, you're probably less going to be sitting in the recruitment space and more in the support phase. But if you are trying to get some volunteers in, sitting in that planning stage first is really important. So we're going to talk about that really quickly. So planning for volunteers. So something to keep in mind with volunteers are, know what you want them to achieve, or what you want to achieve with volunteers. You need to understand the motivations for why they might want to work in the tuck shop. Really need to identify where you need the help in the tuck shop, because that really helps then you go back to setting goals and objectives, because it just makes it more streamlined and a bit more focused. It also helps with your recruitment strategies if you know what you want them for, because then you can be specific in your recruitment strategies. And also retention strategies. If you understand the motivations of each of the volunteers, then you can help retain them. So in terms of planning, in the planning phase, you definitely need to do all of these 5 steps. But the 3 that you absolutely must do are setting the goals, understand the motivations, and understand why you need them in the tuck shop. And that doesn't take too long. There are some worksheets that you can develop. And through the training course, we actually sit down and help you go through each of these steps so you get a clear understanding. And in terms of identifying recruitment strategies, the value of in terms of the planning sections, by doing this, it sets you up. So if you know what you need them for, then that feeds into the recruitment strategy. And then likewise, once you've identified recruitment strategies, that's really important, obviously when you're recruiting them, but also when you're inducting them. So things that you will figure out in how to communicate and what works within communicating is the same ways that you can also use through the induction phase as well. With retention strategies, I think it's really important that retention strategies apply through the induction and the support phase of this cycle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the first one really quickly in the planning phase, and we're going to do setting the goals and objectives. So In terms of setting goals and objectives, the importance of doing that when you do have volunteers is because it helps you identify what you want to achieve from recruiting volunteers, but it also helps you to remain focused on achieving what you need from having volunteers in the tuck shop. So that's a really specific goal, and it really will keep you focused in terms of where you need their assistance throughout the tuck shop. So some examples of a goal might be recruit more home bake volunteers to increase volume of home bake to more than 200 pieces per week. Maybe that's all the volunteer assistance you need. Reducing the overall cost of making sandwiches by having volunteers make all the sandwiches that come through in the orders and the pre-orders. You could do recruit more volunteers to assist in the cleaning and sanitizing of the tuck shop. Maybe there's some afternoons where you have conflicts where you can't be in the tuck shop, and maybe they could just be coming in and helping you out on those afternoons for cleaning and sanitizing and getting it ready for the next day. The other one is perhaps you've done a survey and the community has said they would like a more diverse menu, but you don't feel like you have the cooking skill set to achieve that. So maybe you need to recruit parents who can assist to create a more diverse menu for the school community. Now, in terms of moving on to the next one, understanding motivations. So motivations really sit around planning, recruitment, and retention. So knowing what motivates them will help you, I guess, sell the role by tapping into their motivations. And I've got some examples coming up where I'll show you how they've been able to tap into certain motivations to recruit. And then in retention, obviously, what keeps them motivated to stay? There's obviously some generational differences that we need to be aware of. So younger age volunteers will have different motivations to older age volunteers. And if you are interested in knowing more about motivation, because there is a lot of information on it, it's actually really quite a fascinating read. And around the changing demographics, please do go onto Volunteering Queensland website. I'm happy to send you the link afterwards so you can have a read through of that as well. In terms of where do you need the help? So this is linking back to understand why you want, I guess, the volunteers in the tuck shop in the first place. And it really does link back to the overall inking. Sorry, I should have reread this slide before I typed it up. So the overall linking back to overall tuck shop objectives and directions. That's pretty bad. That's very badly written. I'm very sorry. But it does link back to the objectives and the goals. So, for example, are you looking to improve the culture of the tuck shop? Maybe you need some help with volunteers to do that. Do you need support in the tuck shop with the low skill tasks to enable paid staff to complete more onerous activities? Or do you need to recruit staff to help offset the cost of the wages in the tuck shop? So for whatever you need them for, just be clear in your mind why it is that you want the volunteers to be there. And that will really then help you when you do get volunteers into the tuck shop, that you make sure they're doing the tasks that you need them to do, rather than them doing tasks that actually probably might make your job more difficult, or it's taking away the tasks that you would like to do yourself. Now, in terms of, and this is all, we're going to go into recruitment and retention in a little bit more detail, but I'm just flying over the first 5 steps of planning. So this is all in this planning phase. So when you're planning for recruitment, you need to ask yourself some questions. So why should people volunteer in the tuck shop? Who are you actually trying to recruit? Is it parents, or are you looking for grandparents, or are you looking for school community members? How are you going to be recruiting? I've just got someone else who's coming in. And what are you doing to screen the volunteers? You do need to make sure that the volunteers are a good fit. So what are you doing to make sure that the volunteers will be a good match for your tuck shop? And how are you matching volunteers to roles and their skill set? So making sure that whatever you want them to do in the tuck shop, the volunteers that are coming in, can they actually do that for you? That's really important to make sure that then there's that nice sort of blending between what you need them to do and the skill sets that are coming in on offer from the volunteers. Now, in retention in the planning phase, retention, and the reason why we plan for retention, it's really important that we don't forget that these volunteers are doing it, I guess, for their own, like without any pay, and they're doing it for the goodwill. They're coming in to get something back, essentially, whether it's, and whatever that motivation is, we just need to tap into that. And with retention, it's really about acknowledging the value that that volunteer is contributing to the tuck shop, but also it makes volunteers feel really included and part of the team. as part of that retention process. So focusing on how you're going to retain those volunteers is really important. So what I'm going to do now is, and I know I'm sort of rushing through that little planning bit, but I did want to spend a lot more time in the recruitment and the induction and support phases, because they're the ones really where I feel like we can give you the best tips and tools. So in terms of recruiting, I did have a quick question for you all. So if you are, at this point, I am going to ask people to take themselves off mute. What sort of common recruitment methods do you guys use in your tuck shops that you would be happy to share? Whether you've used them recently or not, but what have you used in the past? If anyone would like to go up first, that would be amazing.
Diane from Emmanuel, we use the newsletter that comes out every fortnight, and sometimes we do a post on Facebook. At the beginning of the year, the principal usually puts a bit of a spiel in his mail out that he does.
And how do you, what's the feedback, or do you get a high level of volunteers coming in after those?
Not really, to be honest. The newsletter does work. Every now and then we'll get after the newsletter comes out, we'll get one or two people, and that's all you need, one or two people every now and then.
Yep.
So, yeah.
No, that's good. And it's as long as you're clear on that, and that's you only need the one or two, then that's great, because you may not have written it down, but in that planning phase, you're like, we only need those one or two, and that's going to make the big difference for us.
Well, at a time is probably
at a time.
What I was thinking of.
Yes. Okay, so at a time.
Get them in, yes. But if we're very desperate and we need some help, we'll be more specific in the newsletter by saying we need help on Fridays, or can you help this Friday, or
yep.
Really,
that's good. And
whatever we can do to get them. At the moment, we used to have a lot of volunteers, but more and more people are just going back to work, and it is challenging.
It is. It's not easy. I mean, it's the changing demographics, I think, make it challenging.
Yes.
Because the pool of volunteers that were available maybe 10, 15 years ago are not the same pool of volunteers that are available now.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I brushed over it before, but Volunteering Queensland have done a lot of work on that. So they can see that the changing demographics of volunteers is really that 45 and above age is where the higher numbers of volunteers tend to exist now. But it is all linked back to children. So we do often find that the parents will volunteer their time if it's linked to something that the kids are doing in the school, whether it's a school activity or a sporting activity. So if the kids are involved, then the parents are likely to be involved as well. But yeah, definitely in that age bracket, that 45 to 64. So I would definitely have a look at that website for some more information.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Diane. Does anybody else have any ways that they would like to share around how they recruit?
I'm Elise from St Joey's.
Hi, Elise.
I'm only just the new convener this year. Previously, the other one had been there for about 20 something years, so didn't do a lot of social media stuff previously. It was just newsletters, and yeah, she worked with a lot of volunteers when I was volunteering maybe 10 years ago. So I had volunteered at the school, and my daughter was there, and so now I'm back in a working role. But there was we had a pool of maybe 15 to 20 volunteers when I was there, when my child was there. And now I wrote my mum in, so she really doesn't get much out of it apart from staying busy. She doesn't need to be there to see her grandchild. So I've got maybe 5 tops.
Yep. And
one of those is weekly. The rest are sporadic when I just kind of know that it's going to be a busy day. So it's just myself. We haven't replaced. I was the second in charge, and so since becoming convener, I haven't got a second in charge yet. So we just did a Facebook call out, and something went out on school bag and in the newsletter. And I got 2 responses, both of which were linked to the school already, as in their partners are teachers at the school. Yep. So I was actually thinking of sort of doing more of a promotion for myself to get people. I think, previously they thought the tuck shop convener was probably a bit scary, I suppose, if that's a word I can use.
So there's an established persona of what people
Yeah.
the culture
Yeah.
in the tuck shop is
Yeah.
at the
So
moment. in the
I'm trying to get past that. Like, and very much our tuck shop was flying under the radar. Like, it was we never did a lot of promo work. It was the same menu for years and years. So trying to get around that by doing a bit more pushing of things like we're starting sushi and things like that. So I think once there's more exposure with what's going on at the tuck shop, it might encourage people to put their hand up.
I think so. And look, hopefully the next couple of slides will help you with some ideas, because I have listed
Yep.
some after this.
Yep.
I just wanted to hear what everyone was doing to see if perhaps there might be more than what we can do. But I think you will find the next, because I think you're on the right track about that school promotion. That sounds like the right approach in terms
Yep.
of getting that plan in place and be strategic about it. Like, think about what events are coming up maybe and see what you can
Well, that's what I have been doing. So we did Lamingtons for Australia Day, and sushi has just started because a few people, I did a monkey survey, and that was what sort of seemed to come up with staff members. That they wanted the sushi. So and I think we're doing Anzac biscuits next week and things like that.
Good.
So,
well, that sounds great.
Yep.
That sounds like you're all on the right, right track. Yeah.
Yeah. So the self-promotion thing, I'm just not comfortable with. But I think if my photo ends up in the newsletter and there's a bit about myself, then it might just make someone put their hand up.
I think putting a face to the name really helps. I think it makes it personal. So I think yes, it's uncomfortable. I don't know a lot of people that enjoy self-promotion. But in the space of a tuck shop, it is really important that people know who you are and know who you are in the school community. And that's just part and parcel of it, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. So that's my.
Thank you, Lee. Does anybody else have something to share? Who else? Chantel from St. Mary's. Do you have anything that you're currently doing around recruitment?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, our school puts out at the beginning of every year a Just One Thing initiative.
Yeah, just one thing. Okay.
Yeah, so it'll have a list of all the ways that parents and our community can volunteer within the school.
Oh, nice.
Across the year, including volunteering in the tuck shop. And then that list is just forwarded on to me, and I contact them people, and usually once they're called up, they do decline.
But it is that bit of
um,
attrition, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Yeah, we currently are 5 days a week. I work those 5 days a week, and I have one volunteer that comes in every Friday.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of work for you.
Yeah, no, it works, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
Well, that's exactly right. And if that works for you and that you're not feeling overwhelmed or overstressed, and there's not a lot of pressure from the school or the parents and friends community.
Yeah, no, our school's pretty good. They offer the teacher aids on Fridays.
Oh, great.
Should get too much. Fridays are obviously, as most schools, are our big day.
Yep.
But
yes, it usually isn't it, really? Fridays seem to be the crazy, chaotic days for everybody.
Yeah, but we found quite a few parents, they do respond to the Just One Thing, but once it comes
for once,
doing it, it's again, everyone's just had to return to work with the others that are around.
And it's difficult to commit for the full term or the full year, isn't it, really? I think that's where a lot of parents do struggle, is the long-term commitment of time. Thank you for that, Chantel. I really appreciate that. Look, we might move on, and I haven't forgotten about the rest of you. I will be getting to you, don't worry. But just I'm going to share the love between you all today. So in terms of some ideas, so these are the common recruitment methods. And Karen, I'm more than happy for you to speak up if you want to during this slide. I've just pulled together a few things from the training manual. But definitely that promotion around the school is a really big deal. So raising awareness of the service in the community. So, and tapping into what the school is doing when they engage with parents, and utilising those moments to also engage and promote the tuck shop. So some of the cool ways that you can do things are obviously prep orientation. So that obviously happens every year, and certain schools have morning teas. Some days you do open days as well. So there might be an orientation for open days specifically for preps. They do prep information evenings. So parents that are interested in sending their kids to school you can get involved in that. And that could be simply as a matter of, you don't necessarily need to cater for the event, but you could maybe, if it's an orientation, you could do tea and coffee near the tuck shop, and you could put maybe some home bake on, or whatever you feel comfortable doing. But definitely flyers, definitely leave sign up forms, sort of get that word out there, and then have a leave behind, I think, is a really important one. So whatever event you go to, leave something behind so that they can look at it later. You guys are already across the school newsletters. That's a pretty common one. In terms of the survey that we did find that the volunteer, like the word of mouth, seemed to be the most popular. Oh, that's okay. No worries, Janelle. Janelle's just sent a message to everyone. She's having trouble with her mic. Don't worry. I'll just ask you questions to respond to in the chat. No dramas. So grandparents' morning tea. So sometimes I do grandparents' day at school. It hasn't happened for a few years, but pre-COVID, grandparents' days is a nice idea. And that's where you could absolutely do, you can cater for that as well. So, and then also senior students. So nice way to get them involved as well in terms of wanting to, they can't obviously volunteer inside the tuck shop, but they can come down, and if you've got a lot of packaging that needs to be folded up, they can sit outside the tuck shop and do that for you. They don't have to be inside the tuck shop to do that, or you can send it off to the classroom and they can get that done. I know that there's some schools that do that with their senior students, particularly for special needs, and they get a little bit overwhelmed by the crowds in tuck shop. So what they do is they get the children to come in when they have so this is in high school, but also in primary, but I've seen it happen in high school where they've come in on a free period and they're actually there for the hour and they take their boxes away that they need to make, and then they bring them back at the end of the hour. And that just generates that community engagement, inclusivity. And that's kind of the culture that you're trying to promote. And then by doing that, by default, parents then think, okay, they're quite inclusive in the way that they include children in the tuck shop. And that sort of is a rolling effect if that's what the culture's like then in the tuck shop. Definitely school events. You don't necessarily have to cater for it, but just being there and just handing out flyers. Maybe you volunteer on the day and just go, look, I am the tuck shop convener. This is my role. This is what I do. And just have a chat to people. Facebook, yes, absolutely. It's definitely school, parent body, community pages. So if you're struggling to get volunteers from inside, you could try from outside. There are options around that as well. What else is there? Oh yeah, brochures at enrollment. That's a really big one. So sometimes the schools don't like to share, but yeah, just throw it in, see how you go. Some examples. So class allocation. I sort of didn't touch on this one, but I've known some schools that have had some success where, because parents are finding it difficult to commit for the full year, what they're finding is, though, if they can allocate a certain period of time throughout the year for a class, so maybe you might have a permanent volunteer that helps you throughout the year, and that's fine. But what you might do is, like for the snacks or the low skill jobs, like the packing the popcorn or sticking the labels on the containers or the paper bags, something that they're just tasks that just take a little bit of time, even if it's chopping up the vegetables or something. You can allocate it to classes to do, and they've been having a little bit of success with that, in that parents can see, oh, I can actually volunteer for like 3 or 4 weeks, and they can share it around. So if you go to the class reps and say, look, I need 3 volunteers for the next 4 weeks from your cohort of 100 parents, you might be surprised that there will be some more uptake, particularly it's for the short time. Kelly and Rachel from Pumicestown have just popped in the comments an incentive of loyalty cards for volunteers. So after 6 times of volunteering, they get a $10 lunch voucher for their child. That's a great idea. And is that, I don't know if you want to get off mute and have a chat, but if you can't, you can put it in the chat. But like, is that successful? Like, do you have a lot that stay after the 10? After the 6, was it 6 times for volunteering, Kelly and Rachel? See if they're typing. I don't know, because no one's talking. It's hard when no one talks back to me. And Janelle was saying hospitality students help in the canteen as part of the curriculum. That's a great idea. So there's some volunteers right there. Thank you for sharing both of those ideas. Please do keep them coming in the chat. If I don't get to it straight away, I apologize, but I will keep checking in on that one. Getting involved in school events. So I kind of spoke about that on the previous slide, but it's a really good opportunity to get that one-on-one, face-to-face I guess, feedback about the tuck shop that sometimes parents may not feel like putting in an email, but it's that anecdotal chatting around the water cooler, I like to call it, where you sort of just get the vibe of the place, right? Like you just kind of pick it up and you get the vibe of what people think about. And then if you sort of have that opportunity to go, well, no, it's not like that anymore. Like, you know, it's a new tuck shop because tuck shop conveners come in and I do things a little bit differently to the old one. So that's a really good opportunity, particularly, you know, if you want to get yourself out there and promote, but also capitalize on any parents who like to visit the tuck shop. So if you've got parents that sort of stop by for a chat, and I know some tuck shops that struggle with parents that just come in for a chat and then they don't do anything, but they just want to come in and have a chat. It's a good idea just to kind of like get them gently involved in the volunteering and hand them a task that if they want to stay for a chat for 15 minutes, is there a task that you can give them for 15 minutes they can do? So that's always a good one. We have, so Kelly and Rachel were saying they have very few but that stay because we look after them. Well, I might be touching base with you when we get to the retention stage of this network meeting today, Kelly and Rachel. Thank you. But yeah, so that's just some ideas around how you can recruit. Like, and there's no silver bullet. And I think that's the challenge is you've just got to give it a go and something will stick and something will work. But because every school is unique, every community is different, we don't have a formula where if you do this plus this will equal loads of volunteers, but definitely having that community presence we know makes a difference. So being out and about in the community definitely is better than not being out and about in the community because it's all about awareness, particularly because parents aren't on school as much as what they used to be. So getting yourself out there, even if there's like barbecues or school, like discos or something, just being around and just saying hello and getting involved, that will really, really help. Now, there's some case studies, and I apologize. I realized after I put these up that the resolution is quite low. But what you can see, this is from Sanford State School. And the way that they promoted for their volunteers, and they did quite a successful campaign, is they did flyers and posters around the school. So they had these all over the school. Expression of interest form attached to the newsletter. So it wasn't just about log on to this email. It was actually like a form where they could fill out. So it kind of removed 2 steps of the process. They could just fill the form out straight away. The class liaison parents, so getting in contact with them and seeing if they could encourage people to come into the come into the tuck shop to volunteer that way. The volunteer roster was placed in the newsletter. So that's quite something that often tuck shop conveners don't share. So I found that was an interesting one. If you can get any local media in the tuck shop, so if you're doing some special event or some quirky thing at the tuck shop, see if there's any media interest. If the schools obviously need to get that run by the principal, but they might, you know, the local newspapers might want to pick that up. Getting the school admin staff on board is really important because they obviously help communicate the information far and wide throughout the community. And generate contacts at school fete. So they have a massive fete out there. So that was a really great opportunity for them to get out there and have that really one-on-one engagement with parents. And that worked really well for them. Now with these posters, I wanted to talk to you really quickly about them. So the Sanford State, so we can't really see it, but under the picture of the 2 girls, there is this, if you have, and then it was like, it's like a tick box. So if you are, and one of them is like passionate for cooking, something about caring about children's nutrition. So it's all about trying to understand those motivations for parents to get involved. So trying to tap into what motivated parents. They've actually used that on that newsletter slide there, or on the poster, sorry, so they can try and understand the motivations a bit better. So once they understood that, then they could use that. I assume that they've used that once those volunteers came into the tuck shop. So people that are focused on nutrition, maybe you got them really focused on trying to find vegetables and cutting up the vegetables and keeping them involved in that, and you know, identifying ways in recipes where you can improve the nutritional value of it. Or passion for cooking, maybe they didn't so care much about the nutritional value of the food item, but they really love the cooking, and if they're passionate about cooking, they're usually quite good and they have a high skill level. So getting to do some of the more complex tasks, maybe that's what they did with that. And I also wanted to talk about this poster really quickly on the right before we moved on, but it was this, I really like this idea about a flyer, and you can see how they've got the name and then the phone number underneath. And that's a great idea, because I think that gives, like, that could be posted up anywhere through the school, and it's as the parents see it, they'll pull it down, rather than them having to be at the right time, at the right moment at the school as you're passing by. Maybe they don't read the newsletter, but if they're at the school and they see this, then they might, and if they're interested, they might just pull off the little thing at the bottom. And I mean, it's what we used to see all the time on the power pole ones, remember? Years ago, it's like, lost dog, have you seen my dog? And you pull the little thing off, or I'm doing gardening services here, this is my contact details. So things like that. So similar to posters, but really kind of getting that engagement back. So they're wanting to hear back from the parents as part of their promotional materials. Karen, was there anything more you wanted to add on that case study? I know I've sort of just pulled it from the training slides. Was there anything else that I've missed?
No, everything you've mentioned in the case studies is spot on. We Quast ran the Stanford State School Tuckshop for a number of years. It had closed down and the principal was very keen to get it back up and running. So we developed those posters, the little flyers, all of that information, and we had great success getting volunteers in. But I do have to say that was sort of 6-7 years ago. And I believe they've still got a great volunteer cohort at the school. And they are still using a lot of these posters that we did design and a lot of the ideas that we came up with. So they certainly are worth thinking about for your own school, because they were popular then, and I believe they're still very popular now.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. I didn't actually realise that we ran that. This is
yes.
Here we go.
It was
Oh,
fun
good.
times.
That
Getting us all out of the office and into the tuck shop and experiencing what all of you do every day. It threw a completely different perspective on things for us. It's all well and good for us to be telling you, you know, what we think you should do, but you're at the coalface. And then we learnt a lot during that time at Sanford.
That's wonderful. That's a really good case study of where we know it's worked. So they tried loads of different options, and I think probably the takeaway is they did a lot throughout the year. So it wasn't once a term or it wasn't once a year. It was this continual activity that they focused on. And they just sort of programmed it in. So it was probably like once a month that they said, right, what are we doing for recruitment this month? What flyers are we sending out? Or what are we going to say in the newsletter? Have we got any school events that are coming up? Who's going to go and who's going to be there? So just keeping an eye on things is probably the easiest way through. And it just keeps things rolling, because people who may not have been available to volunteer at the beginning of the year might be available in term 2, and they might be available in term 3. But if we're not contacting them or engaging them at that point in time, then we might miss that opportunity. Now, with the next slide, we have sort of already spoken about how do you recruit, but I wanted to give the opportunity to anybody to speak if they wanted to. Does anybody, before we move on to induction and support, which is sort of around that attraction and retention, did anyone have any other ideas that they wanted to add in?
Donna, sorry, Karen here again.
Hi, Karen.
Not sure if you people are aware, but Volunteering Queensland have a matching service as well that you can register for. So it might be worth popping on their website and having a look at that. You can pop in who it is you're looking for, what skills you're after, and see if you get any takers, because people who are looking for volunteer opportunities are often on their website. Also, another avenue is looking at that older group of volunteers. As Donna mentioned, the demographics have certainly changed. So if there's any groups within your community, CWA, Rotary, those sorts of things, it's worth reaching out to them, because that group of people, semi-retired, retired, they're still very active and they want to be involved in their community. And being in the tuck shop, around the students, engaging with other parents, it might be just what they're looking for. Women who love cooking, have a passion for cooking. It's worth considering those other options as well.
Yeah, that's
Thanks,
actually a great idea. Sorry, Karen, I saw those in the slides and I forgot to add them in. So Volunteering Queensland, yes, Kelly, that was So I think if you just Google volunteering Queensland,
Yeah.
but we've got some links, I think. So I will send you some links at the end, everybody. What I normally do is I'll send an email out to say thanks for coming along today. And I tend to provide some like a copy of the slides from here as well. And I'll send some links in the email. So that's why it's always good to attend these network meetings, because it's only people who attend that get the extra bits at the end in an email. Awesome. Okay, so induction, and I'm conscious we've only got 15 minutes left. So we're doing okay, but we've only got a couple more slides each, so that's fine. We should be all right. But if anyone does need to go at 4:45, totally understand. Just let me know, give me a heads up, and I'll stop so we can say goodbye. So inducting. So this is all about once you've recruited and they've shown promise and they're ready to come in. So it's all about, I think the big thing with induction is it's really the small things that matter. And I really wanted to highlight that, because I think the hard part is the recruitment, right? For us, we put so much energy into recruiting, and then we finally get a volunteer and we're like, yeah, let's get them in. And then for them, that's where their journey is just beginning. So keeping them engaged and making them feel like a valued member of the team, that's where it starts for them in this induction phase. And so I guess the question is, I mean, how do you induct volunteers into the tuck shop? So do you do anything at the moment? Is there anything special that you do for them? Do you have any of the following? So I've got a couple of slides in a moment where I'll walk through sort of a checklist, but these are sort of things that we recommend at Quast from a tips and tricks for volunteering once you've got them in there. Is a sign-up sheet, a booklet, definitely code of conduct. And that's only for instances where volunteers who you've recruited don't tend to be working out. But if they've got a code of conduct, it's something very formal for you to be able to fall back on rather than it being a personal conflict. Volunteer handbooks, orientation in person or on paper. The rostering system is really good, and communication network. So how they can get in contact with you and how you can get in contact with them. And with regards to orientation in a group, so you can do it in a group or in a person or individually, depending on what works best and depending on the number of volunteers that you get through. But it really is yourself that probably needs to do it as the convener. If you have a 2IC, that's also fine. But someone who's there every day and who's the face of the tuck shop is probably important to do that. Group training at the start of the term. So obviously try not to do it all the time. Or if you do have an ad hoc that comes through quite a day of the week, I mean, you guys know all this anyway, you just make it work within your work schedule. But how do you do it? And I think this is the thing where we forget that people learn in many, many different ways. So some like it visually, some like it written down. So when we're explaining how things happen in a tuck shop, being able to demonstrate both visually and written down is really important. So I know for myself that I am a mixture of both. So I love to take notes whilst I'm learning. So I will scribble all over my slides or all over anything, a piece of paper that anyone gives me. But in the absence of that piece of paper, I just don't retain as much information. And I think it's the actual act of scribbling that helps me to retain that information. And I love pictures. So for me, I'm a very visual learner. And particularly when you're getting individuals to make recipes, having a visual explanation of what you want them to do, like how do you make a ham and cheese sandwich? Whilst that seems quite simple, everyone makes a ham and cheese sandwich differently, and it's about having that consistency. And no one likes to get it wrong. So if they do it wrong and then you have to correct them, it just creates that level of awkwardness sometimes it just makes them a bit embarrassed that they did it wrong. And so it's about, well, if we can remove that embarrassment by just showing them visually or written down or somehow how we like that ham and cheese sandwich to be made, how we like to cut it. Is it in triangles or is it in rectangles? I mean, that's a very common area where people do sandwiches differently. So think about all those things when you're orientating them into the group. But to help you out, because Quast have got a lot of experience around volunteering, and Karen is very passionate about volunteering. So if you have any questions from today, particularly around the recruitment, please call us. Karen is the master. So she will be more than happy to talk to you ad nauseum about any ideas that you might have, anything that you're thinking about. We're also happy to help. I'm always at the end of the phone as well, but I just know that Karen has many more years experience than I do. But this is an orientation checklist that we recommend that tuck shops do implement more for yourselves, but also for them. So this is something that you would give to the volunteer. And this is just an example. So you don't need to have all of this in there. It would be great if you do, but if you don't have it all, it's fine. You can create your own from this template. Like this is a checklist template for you. But there's kind of like 4 sections. So it's before they start. So what information do you want them to have before they start? But what do you need from them? So for example, blue cards, you need to know that if they're not a parent and they are a grandparent or they're coming in from outside, that they have a blue card. So you need that before they start. They need to know what dress code they need for the tuck shop. So they can't come in open closed shoes, their hair needs to be back, and what sort of clothing is appropriate. Does the school have any orientation that they need to do? So if they're not a parent and they are coming from outside of the community, quite often the school has their own workplace health and safety policies that they need to read through. There's a code of conduct that they need to be aware of. And so they're the little things that you need to like set up in place. So that's, you know, this is like the checklist. And then the next part is information that's going to help them be a reliable and useful volunteer. So things like, oh, thanks, Elise. It's on our website. So I'll sending the link through in an email afterwards with the link directly to this checklist. So you can take that with you. But yeah, so the volunteer roster, so they'll know then what days they're working. They'll also know what days you don't have a lot of volunteers. So that might be an opportunity for them to go, oh, I've actually got an extra couple of hours on a Wednesday and you don't have a lot. Can I come in on the Wednesday? So letting them see the roster is good, not just telling them the day that you want them to be there. You know, I have looked after our kids' food safety training. So doing some level of food handling sort of training or guidelines is really beneficial, because at least then you know how they're going to be. There's an expectation that they understand how to manage or handle food in a tuck shop, because it's not the same as in a kitchen at home. Now we've got QWOS definitely has a training course that's free online for all, like it's free for everybody. Don't have to be a member of QWOS, and it's definitely recommended for volunteers. It takes about 15 minutes and they get a little certificate at the end of it. So that's something. Oh, Karen. So Karen, I will share the link. Karen's sending me links in the chat. So I will share them out at the end. But yeah, so definitely check out the QWOS website for our training, and it doesn't take very long. So I'll send you that link as well. But that also just means you don't have to walk through on the day how to wash their hands and all the little things. Like it's really good, that sort of training. It just covers it off.
Yeah. Excuse me, Donna.
Yes.
Also, that volunteer orientation checklist, it is available on our website in the volunteering section, as are a lot of the forms that Donna's been talking about. So when you get a chance, have a look in there. You don't need to start everything from scratch. We do already have a lot. And as part of the volunteering course that we're preparing at the moment, there will be a full volunteer induction kit put together also. So, you know, it's great to, if you're really keen and you want to start doing it all yourself, that's great. But otherwise, just hold off for a little bit, wait for our course to come out, but also have a look in the volunteer section at the moment. And there'll be lots of things that you can pull out and start using straight away.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like use what you want. Go onto that website and pull down whatever you need. That is what it is there for. Thank you, Karen. And so after the useful volunteer, also sort of, if you have an idea of what you want them to be doing on the day, it's okay to let them know beforehand and saying, I just need you to come in and do the sandwiches, or even if it's via email saying, thanks so much for coming in and agreeing to help out with the, you know, I think for tomorrow, I'm going to get you started on the sandwiches. I mean, that's fine. It doesn't have to be in a formal document if you don't have time or you don't have one. Somewhere there where it's communicated. First day, meet and greet orientation. This is a really handy checklist for you, because you'll be so busy on the day that you'll think that you've said something that maybe you haven't. So this one is more about making sure that there's a sign in and sign out procedure, because under school policies, obviously everyone needs to sign in and sign out. So they'll have to sign in at the school, but also sign in at the tuck shop. Storage of personal belongings, like where do they put their handbags or their hats or their sunglasses? I know a lot of volunteers walk in with their sunglasses and they just leave them on the bench where you're about to make sandwiches. So reminding them, if they take their sunglasses off, they have to put them in their handbags and put the handbags over there. Tour of the facilities. I mean, the tuck shop I work in is very small, so you literally stand in one corner and can point to everything. That's literally our tour. But some tuck shops have different spaces and different rooms. Emergency exits, letting them know where they need to go if in case the fire alarm goes off, or they just need to get out of there really quickly. Is an allergies protocol. Making them familiar with the children that have allergies is probably really important, particularly if they're going to be doing over-the-counter service. it's really important that they're aware of what allergies, like who has the allergies in the school, but also just a meet and greet of the team. So people that they'll meet during their courses being a volunteer, but also even the cleaning staff at the school, anyone who's going to pop in and say hello, it's a really good opportunity for them to get to know and become part of that community. And that really leads that, once you've done that and they start settling in, it really comes into that support network. So I'm just going to flick to the next because I am conscious of time. So I'm sorry for rushing. I knew it would be long. I'm trying not to rush too much. And if you've got any feedback on this one and if you'd like us to focus more or less on certain topics, please do let me know, because we are all about making it suit you and suit your needs. So with support, so this is, I guess, in that cycle, it's that support. So this is really coming into that retention of volunteers. So I know recruitment's challenging, but if we can get some in and then we've got some volunteers that we would like to get back or keep going, it's really important that, and I'm just going to go back over the first couple of slides that we saw a long time ago, but it is about the time that's willingly given for the common good. So we want our volunteers to feel like they're not being pressured into giving their time, and they're really happy to keep giving their time, because they are invaluable to the current model of how tuck shops are set up, particularly for primary schools. Volunteers are essential for that to be really kicking along and humming really, really well. Again, this is the kind of culture that volunteers want to see in tuck shops. So when we are thinking about how we support our tuck shop volunteers, how do we provide or think about how you're providing a culture that is fun, it is busy. Obviously they go there to be busy. Is it active? Personal satisfaction. Are we delivering on the motivations that got them into the tuck shop in the first place? Are they getting that sense of self-satisfaction? So, and a support can appear in many different ways, and it's sometimes the ones that we don't even consider. So that obviously that personal engagement with the supervisor. So you would be, I guess, their volunteer supervisor in this scenario. But it's all the little things, like if you've gone to the effort of writing down instructions and menu procedures have been explained to them clearly, that has a really big impact on someone's self-worth into that space, because they feel like you've made the time to do something for their benefit. And that makes them feel really part of the team. And that, having that ongoing engagement is really important. Engagement all the time. So we don't really want volunteers that walk in and then don't talk to anybody or do anything or interact with anybody for the entire time that they're there, because that's not really what volunteering is all about. It's all about getting them involved. So really getting them involved in tuck shop activities as much as you can is really important.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I think your last point is fantastic, but I think it's also a two-way street. Sometimes volunteers turn up and they're just left to their own devices. Often they're not interacted with. So it is a bit of both. You need to make sure that they're involved in everything that's going on, that you're including them in conversations, you're helping them if they're not really sure what they're doing, always be open to helping them. So that is a bit of a two-way thing. It's, the volunteer and the other people in the tuck shop. That includes the convener, any other paid staff, the other volunteers, just get everybody as friendly as possible.
Yes. Yeah, because we're all there for the kids in the end, aren't we?
Yeah,
like we're all there
that's
to
right.
provide a service to the school and to the children. And what's more fun than that, really?
Yeah.
You might have to sweat a few kilos in the summer to get it done, but that's okay. So in terms of, I don't know how we're all feeling, but in terms of what support do you guys provide for volunteers? I have a little poll, which I really wanted to run really quickly. So I'm going to run it really quickly for you now. So this is around orienteering and support, but I'm just going to launch it. So if you all just want to respond really quickly to what putting up the poll, I think it's 4 questions. So it'll take you like 30 seconds max, and then we can just keep moving, but then we can talk about like what's coming through. So I've just launched that, and I can see if you're responding or not because it comes up on my screen. So don't be shy. And Chrissy and Catherine, you may also participate in this if you would like, because I know you also.
Thank you. Well, Quast has volunteers. We have a volunteer management committee
We do.
that we look after very well?
Okay, thanks everyone. They're all coming through. I love it. I love it. There's so much. Definitely we're communicating before they start. That's excellent. It's really good. All right. So everyone's answered. So it sounds like I can end that poll now. And I'm going to share the results really quickly for you. So did that share on your screen? It's not showing up that it's sharing.
Yes, I can see it, Donna.
You can see it?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Oh, Elise was just saying she professionally made badges done for regular ladies last year, even had a little smiling apple on them. It helped the kids and other volunteers learn everyone's names. I love that idea, Elise. Just make it really personalising it. That's a great idea. I love name badges. I'm a big fan. I don't think we do enough name badges in this day and age. So in terms of the poll results, obviously, so yeah, we're all pretty good in terms of induction and orientation. If you don't have one in place, that's okay. It's probably just something to think about. It might just be a tick and flick on a piece of paper while you get started. And then you can figure out what you really need to be saying to them as you move forward, and maybe ask volunteers that you have in your tuck shop already what they would have liked to have known when they started that they didn't know. And that will help you with your checklist. Prior to starting, yes, excellent that we're all engaging with them at some point to confirm what you want them to do or some information before starting. In terms of getting a clear list of activities to do at the beginning of the day, just have a think about that. It's a bit of a split response there. Sometimes we don't have the time if we're doing it on a day-to-day, but if it's something that we get them to do on a regular basis, maybe there's something to explore there. And food handling training. So yeah, there's a few that haven't done the food handling training or guidelines. So please just jump online to our website and just ask them to do that. If you're interested, it's a great little training tool, and it's over and done within 10-15 minutes. And they do get a little certificate at the end, which you can present to them, or they can have it up, and you can have it up on the wall or something if you want. So thanks everyone for that. So in terms of support, that was excellent. I think the big thing is around, what do you think volunteers want from supervisors? And this is going to be the last one I'll end with you today in terms of a think tank. Just spend a couple of minutes writing down what you think your volunteers want from you as your supervisor. I'll give you like 30 seconds to write 3 really quick things. And then what we'll do is I'll show you some sort of what we also received from a survey in terms of what we got back in terms of the data. So have and let me know at the end, once you've written your 3 down, whether there's a marry up or whether there's a bit of a disconnect between what you've written down and what we found in our survey, because it is fascinating to see what other people have to say. And if you're all finished, just let me know. It's been 30 seconds. So in terms of what we got back, these are the things that they said they wanted from a good volunteer coordinator or a supervisor, or whatever the term is, manager, whatever you want to call it. So approachable, organised, friendly, committed to the cause. I love that one. Has experience as a volunteer, down to earth, always reliable, and takes time for each volunteer. Oh, yeah, clear instructions and a welcoming environment. Yes, Janelle, that's some excellent options as well. I think that sort of sits quite nicely in with everything that's been here. So I think that sits under the organised, so having clear and consistent directions. Yep, absolutely. Being available, open to comment and suggestions. Guys are all over it. You know exactly what it is. So, yep, stability. So Lisa is from St. Joseph's, consistent advice with completing task, approachability. Thank you, guys. Yeah, and that's exactly it. So it's just about having a reflective moment to think, are you doing all of those things for your volunteers that are volunteering, particularly because they are few and far between these days. So the ones that do come, we would like to keep them for as long as we can. So making sure that we're doing what we can to make them feel as part of the team is really important. Now, just moving on, because we are out of time, I wanted to show you really quickly station job sheets. For these are the ones where you have clear and consistent advice and directions. So if you don't have a cook station, this is something that you can quite easily do. If you put someone in front of, this is an example of a hot food preparation zone. So this person's obviously on hot food for the day. So this is the order that you need them to do the tasks. And then behind each task, they have an activity sheet that explains the process on how they do that. Also Cook Station Friday. So this is also the tally sheet. So they're responsible for tallying up all the food that they've created, whether it came through the meal deal, a flexi or a counter. So that's just how they've taken their orders at that school. So we've got some examples of that on our website. So please do have a look through that. So in summary, it really is just remembering that it's all about, in the end, this volunteer management cycle. When we're looking at attracting and retaining volunteers, it would be lovely if we only had to do it once and then we'd be done with it and we didn't have to like seek out and recruit for volunteers. But unfortunately, that's just not the nature of the way of the pool of volunteers that are out there. That's just not how they are now. So always planning, always recruiting, always keeping in mind recruitment opportunities, I think throughout the year will be really important. So if you can plan your resources ahead of time, so maybe you just make a flyer and you don't know when to use it, but if an event comes up, you're like, I've got a great flyer, I can just give that. And then it's not so much last minute rushing to get things ready. So planning to recruit and planning to get yourself out there in the school community. Definitely go on to our website, have a look around. We have a page just for volunteering. So please do go on there and just have a look and see what you can find. There are some few gold nuggets in there, but it just really depends what you're looking for. Don't forget, inducting is as important as recruiting, because for them, that's where their journey with you starts, at that induction, really. And they're very excited to be part of the team, and we want them to stay excited as part of the team. And then just continue to, when you do have volunteers, how are you supporting them? Are you thinking about their motivations for why they wanted to volunteer in the first place? Are you delivering on your goals and objectives that you set, so that are these volunteers actually helping you to achieve the goals that you've set out to achieve for the Tuck Shop? So that's really it for the rest of it. I know we've gone a bit over, so thank you so much for all staying online. Do you have any questions before we go? Because I really love questions and feedback. And then if I can't answer the question, what I will do is I will pop it through in the email and respond to everybody. So please put it in the chat or take yourself off mute and we can have a quick chat before we all go home.
Donna, Karen here again.
Hi, Karen.
Sorry, I missed the very beginning, I'm sorry, and you may already have mentioned it there, but have you given a plug to the Connections Through Cooking program?
No, I haven't.
Which is a great way to get some volunteers.
So, oh my goodness, Karen, how did I forget that? So Connections Through Cooking, we have a program here where we have, and I'm just going to get the flyer, 1 second. So you can see it, and I'll put it in the screen so it's in focus. So this one here. So this is a flyer which I will attach to the email, but it's volunteering in school tuck shops, and we've got a program that's called Connections Through Cooking. And basically what we do is we partner in with TAFE Queensland, and we identify individuals that are attending TAFE and English is their second language. So they're very highly skilled individuals, but they've just come in from overseas, and they're really working on their English. And we're working with TAFE Queensland, and we're connecting them in with tuck shops. So they're actually going through and they're actually volunteering, and we set them up as volunteers in different tuck shops around Queensland. And we are having raging success with this at the moment. I think it's only been going, we started during COVID, so unfortunately we didn't really get such an uptake, but we're really starting to get an uptake. So we've got 6 or 7 schools that are involved at the moment, and it really has only been kicking off in 6 months, and they're loving it. And they're just finding the contributions from these volunteers because they're really engaged and they really want to be part of the community. So that's their motivation for joining this program. So if you want to know more, I'll send it through in an email. But definitely something to look at. Thank you, Karen. I forgot to mention that.
No, you're welcome.
Ran out of time putting that in. So thank you, everybody. So Elise didn't have any questions, but did anybody else have any questions before I go? I'm going to stop sharing now so I can actually, so you can stop. There we go. That's better. All right. Well, thank you so much for everybody for coming today. As always, I'll send an email out afterwards. This is going up online because it has been recorded. So if you've got any questions, please email it through, but you can always watch it back later online. It usually takes about a week for us to get it up online. But if you have attended ones in the past, they should be up there by now. So Diane, you'll be on a few. So keep an eye out. Thank you, everybody. I'll say goodbye and I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Donna. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.